Hi, I'm David Lawrence, and I feel like that's who I am. I'm a Kansas Jayhawk. I've got an awesome family and friends. I've got a deep faith, but for 50 years, I'm a Jayhawk, and so blessed to be one.
Hanni and the Hawks is presented by Jefferson's with 2 Lawrence locations. Obviously, they're home to the best wings in town. You know that. But did you know they've got some creative new menu items, including their cheesy pepperoni crunch rolls, all right? These are amazing. They're stuffed with pepperoni pizza flavor, fried perfectly crispy, and served with marinara. Out of this world. How about the new Buffalo Chicken Philly? It's a twist on your favorite Philly, served with chicken and drizzled with their special mild sauce and house-made ranch. They also now have chicken and waffles. So whether you want the classic wings with 21 different sauces or something new and creative, they got it for you at Jefferson's on Mass and Wakarusa. Jefferson's, presenting sponsor of Hanni and the Hawks. What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Hanni and the Hawks right here on Kansas Nation, presented by Jefferson's. Well, this episode today is a truly special one because we get to talk to a former player, but a lifelong Jayhawk ambassador, truly one of my favorite Hawks of all time and one of my closest friends on this earth as well, Mr. David Lawrence, KU broadcaster, KU football star, and all-around amazing guy. Great to see you, DL.
Brian, it's great to be here. I just feel like we're hanging out like what we've been doing for the last 20 years.
Isn't that wild? I hadn't actually gone back to count up the number of years we've been working together in one capacity or another, but now that you mention it, it has been about 20, hasn't it? Back to our Rock Chalk Sports Talk days on West 6th Street, KLWN, you, me, and Bud Stallworth. That was a trio, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little Scott Pollard thrown in there.
No doubt.
Yeah, that was good radio.
That was some great times, no doubt. And we're going to tell some of those similar stories today. But I want today to be about your life, first in terms of how you got to Kansas, what made you fall in love with the University of Kansas and become this lifelong Jayhawk ambassador, and cover a lot of those topics about you as a player, team captain, coach, and obviously eventually a broadcaster. But then in the second half of the conversation, as someone that's gone on to cover Kansas football and Kansas basketball and all the sports, heck, he does the women's basketball games at home as well, some of your favorite memories behind the mic. So it's kind of a multi-pronged conversation we're going to have here today. But why don't we start by talking about a kid from Parsons, Kansas, who got to go to at least one KU football game every year, including age 2, is it right? You got to see the Orange Bowl Jayhawks?
Well, yes, 1968. I was 10, and I've told the story before, but it was just such an epiphany of when it was cemented, literally cemented into my mind. I came up with my dad and brother from Parsons. We've never seen hills before. We parked down by the field house. We walked as a 10-year-old up the hill. I was breathing heavy, and I got down, looked over the top of that, and it was a late non-conference game against New Mexico State, and must have had a lot of rain because the grass, I still remember the images of the grass looking down the hill. It was a stadium that had all the flags on it. That's what they used to do to the stadiums around, and certainly to our stadium. And I never forgot about it. I mean, that's what I want to do.
That's amazing. 10 years old, and I want to ask you later about your thoughts walking into the stadium now, coming down Mount Oriad and seeing what it looks like all these years later. But to fall in love with the game day atmosphere, I'm sure everything felt gigantic back then. Who were some of the players you watched on that day that made you think, man, I want to play here like them?
Bobby Douglas, John Riggins, John Zook. The list goes on and on. I mean, arguably as good a Jayhawk football team as we've ever had. The infamous 12th man on the field kept us from either winning a national championship or getting in the top 2 or 3. But it was great. And I remember playing catch with Bobby Douglas on the sideline at one of the alumni scrimmages or whatever it was. I mean, that was a high for me after all these years.
Man.
And Bobby at the age of, I don't know, 65, 70 years old, he could still break someone's fingers. He had that kind of strength.
How about that? Not yours, though, not with those huge hands. But tell me about when the kid who had a passion for football, and specifically Kansas football, started making waves down in Parsons, Kansas, that he was going to be a D1 prospect and he was going to have several options in front of him. But when did you realize you were gifted and you could possibly do this at the collegiate level?
Not until the summer before my senior year. That's why I always kind of smirk when people talk about someone being a recruit and making all their decisions it's sophomore or junior year. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten recruited by anyone, but end of my junior year, I just grew up and picked up about 4 inches in height, and I was an offensive and defensive tackle the year before, but I went up to a KU camp and they saw some things that I was able to do, and that's when they started to recruit me. And once Kansas did, then Arkansas, Oklahoma State, K-State followed suit, and I kind of told everyone else I was going to stay in the vicinity. Arkansas would be another one that recruited me pretty heavily. It would have been a slam dunk if Fambrough would have been there, but Bud Moore was there. I'm grateful for Bud for a lot of things. He passed recently, but he didn't have the personality of Don Fambrough. So it made me open my eye to Arkansas in particular. They happen to be in the Southwest Conference. So that made my decision pretty easy to come up to Lawrence. That's where I met Steve Smith, my lifetime great friend, and we were recruited together, and we were roommates for 6 years. And I felt just very fortunate that we were able to have a friendship and get to be roommates together, because that's a big influence on you. And I'm really grateful that Steve and I had that opportunity, because it's meant a lifetime friendship.
That's fantastic. Most folks that know your story or know you even a little bit know that Don Fambrough would go on to become not just your favorite coach you ever played for, but a second father to you in some regards. When in your career did he enter the picture, and talk about the origin of the relationship from there?
It's funny. I don't know how much detail I want to go into this, but Steve and I had developed a reputation of being two of the good guys on campus, and we happened to go to Manhattan to go to Aggieville to watch a basketball game. And we ended up getting into some trouble. And my first conversation with Don Fambrough, who, yes, ended up being very much like a father to me, was Steve and I telling him that we had to visit the Manhattan Police Department that night.
Oh, yeah?
And so that's kind of interesting how we got started off together. But I think deep down, he probably knew, he heard about us. So he didn't let that first meeting with us decide who we were. But yeah, that was an interesting conversation that we had first. But I remember the people that were seniors on the team had been with Fambrough, what we call Fam 1, because he was the head coach before. And I remember them telling us, the younger guys, man, you are so lucky. You are so lucky. You're not going to believe what a great person he is. Yeah. And you're just going to love having Don Fambrough as your coach. So, yeah, it was a high expectation. Certainly it met all those. And as I joked with Fambrough for many years, I've told you, if Fambrough only could schedule a better non-conference schedule, Fambrough probably would have never lost his job either time. But as it is, they're the only coach to be hired twice and fired twice from his alma mater. And of course, the story was that he would schedule Oregon, Tennessee, Florida State, the U, Pittsburgh, and that's before, and of course we played TCU to start the schedule almost every year. So very difficult, to have a glossy record when you start out playing those type of powerhouses. But Fambrough would always say, you know what, I just feel like I owe it to the university to play those top teams because that's just how much pride he had as being a Jayhawk. He felt that that was kind of underserving who Kansas really was if he played something less than those top teams.
Huge pride in KU, fiercely loyal, loved the band, would go to bat for the guys that would go to bat for him. I mean, incredible players coach in that regard. Speak to some of the other things that made him so special, because for a large portion of our listening and viewership group here, they know of Don Fambrough's success perhaps, but you lived it. So what personal anecdotes can you share as to what made him so special?
Well, first of all, I understand why people look at Don Fambrough's record and say, why did we name the street after a guy that didn't have a winning record? I mean, I get that. I mentioned the schedule, you know, it was a big reason for that, even though he did have some outstanding years, twice being the conference coach of the year. But he just loved his guys, and he loved his alma mater, and he never changed that. You know, that's just who he was for 50 years after he was finished playing. And we would sit around and talk for many years. I found out that after the good years, he was offered other jobs that would have been considered better jobs. And he, you know, of course today, what do? You have your agent leak that out, right? You leverage that into getting a raise. But Fambrough didn't ever share that. So,
cut from a different cloth. He was a special guy, no doubt. And boy, we could talk for an hour about some great Fambrough stories, but today's about you. He's a huge part of your story, and big reason why you wanted to go into coaching after your playing days were done. But take us back briefly to some of those playing days. Team captain, offensive player of the year, all Big 8 conference. You guys got to go to the Hall of Fame Bowl. Educate some of the younger listeners on what it was like in the late 70s, early 80s with Coach Fam and the like.
It was a tough conference. You know, the Big 8 was tough, and it was the perfect conference. I mean, you think about someone working in Lawrence, Kansas, and they were a big football fan. You could wake up on Saturday morning on every road trip except for one and drive yourself to the game to support your team.
Man,
I mean, that was a perfect world. Of course, that other one was Colorado, but it was a great conference. You had your rivals in there. It was Missouri. Back then, you know, the way things were, we just kind of felt we had to beat Kansas State because that's who we were. And of course, everything changed after a while. But it was all about the Missouri game. Fambrough's legacy included much of his dislike about our arch rival, the Missouri Tigers. But we kind of started over when Fambrough was rehired, and we got better every year. And my senior year, we went 8-3 and beat Missouri, who was like a top 10 team on senior day, and it was just the perfect finish to a career. We didn't win in the bowl game, but frankly, that's why you should never play after the Missouri game because literally the party did not finish that night. It just went on and on and on. But it was a great road trip for our first bowl game. And of course, back then, a bowl game was really a big deal.
Yeah.
You had to be pretty good to go to a bowl game. In fact, the motivation, I don't even know if it was true today, but we were told that the winner of the Kansas-Missouri game in 1981 would go to the Tangerine Bowl in Florida, a little better bowl than in Birmingham, Alabama. And of course, Fambrough came to us, literally just hit me an epiphany. In the last 2 years, Fambrough probably made all this up to motivate us because you didn't have anything online, and we didn't know except for what he told us. But he told us he done a leak that we were going to get to go to the Tangerine Bowl if we beat Missouri that next Saturday. And again, they were a top 10 team. And then on Monday and Tuesday, he came and boy, his dauber was down and looked like somebody had shot his dog. And he just says, man, I feel so bad. He said, I told you that you had a chance to go to the Tangerine Bowl. But I'll tell you, something happened. And that's when he came up with the story that the Tigers had worked a backdoor deal to get the invitation to the Tangerine Bowl before the game started. And, of course, motivation, oh, my gosh. I mean, Tigers, they didn't have a chance. But did he just make all that up? I mean, what the ultimate way to get your team excited about playing another is to tell them that they worked this backdoor deal and now you couldn't go to Florida. He says, all I can promise you is you can play those Missouri Tigers.
Well, true story or not, in 1981, maybe Lou Perkins got him back. What would that have been? About 26 years later, with the scheduling of a different type bowl in the state of Florida.
And then some.
The Orange Bowl. And you can go back and read the history on that if you want. But yes, I love you retelling any Fam story you can deliver because you do as good a Fam impression as anybody. And I was going to ask, it was on the list, and I think you've already answered it. Was the senior season victory over Mizzou your proudest day as a Jayhawk? What else would be in your top 2 or 3 career moments as a player?
Well, the program was ascending throughout my time there. It was kind of rebounding when Fambrough took over the job again in 1979, and we just got better every year, and we left on a high note, and I felt it was just going to continue to rise. We actually had most of the best players returning for 1982, and of course that's when I was hit with the opportunity by Fambrough to stick around to be a graduate assistant coach and even a coaching future as a full-time coach after that. And that just, I mean, that became the perfect ending for me. You know, that I was going to get to not only play under my mentor and father-like figure, but now I was going to get to learn from him as an assistant coach. And that's why when the Dallas Cowboys came calling to get me to sign a contract with them, because I didn't go to the combine. I had an opportunity, but again, I just felt like I could see my pathway, my life pathway. It was going to stay in Lawrence and coach under Don Fambrough. And so the Cowboys did increase the money a little bit, so it made it a little more interesting. But in the end, I did say no to that, to stay and be a coach for my mentor, Don Fambrough.
Yeah, that's so cool. So cool. And because you did, obviously life, whether you live 10 years or 110 years, it's all about a series of choices and forks in the road and all of that. And you elect to coach with Coach Fam, and during that GA season of 1982, while serving that role on his staff, a guy by the name of Tom Hedrick, who's looking to save some money on his color analyst, and you're going to be traveling anyway with the team, right? He approaches you and Coach Fam about having you slide into that color analyst seat. Pick up the story from there.
Well, I don't know that it happened. I'm sure someone has done that in some capacity before, but never before at Kansas. But Tom Hedrick, looking for a color analyst. I was replacing David James, which was a tough one. But, I mean, I was a coach, and so he said that he had talked to Don Fambrough, and he needed an analyst, and he felt that I would be really good. And, wow, I mean, I was flattered. I never approached him about doing radio. I was going to be a coach at Kansas. And Fambrough gave his approval. So if Fambrough's okay with it, no one was better prepared, because back then we didn't have the grad assistant coaches broke down all the tape, and I literally scouted the opponent, coached our team, and so I did warm-ups with the Jayhawks. But then at 128 or 129. I walked into the radio booth with Tom, and that's when I put on the headset, and I was a radio analyst for the first time ever. Pretty great way to start out your career. At the time, I thought, that I was going to be a coach for my career, but man, what a great opportunity that Tom Hedrick gave me. And certainly, I must have done a good enough job. I was certainly prepared. That kind of stuck with me, and opportunities continued for me with that. But yeah, so many times in telling this story, I have to stop and say, so blessed. To have these people that believed in me.
Absolutely. We joke that Tom was looking for a guy who was going to already be traveling that could slide into that chair, but the truth of the matter is he'd interviewed you many times. He knew how articulate and how analytical you could be, while breaking it down in an easily digestible way for the common fan that might not know all the intricacies of football. He saw that in you, and so it was a natural fit. I'm curious, though, what was it like working with him? The Parrot had a reputation back in the day that, he could fill those 3 hours pretty easy on his own. Did you find a way to get a word in edgewise?
My goal wasn't to talk more. All I'm thinking is I just want to win. I really could care less about how they, quote, radio broadcasts went. I mean, I was a coach. I broke down the tape. I coached the tight ends. I'm actually watching how my tight ends are doing while calling the game. And interestingly, in the home games, he was a student, and at KU, I didn't get a chance to know him much because, again, I was a coach right up until kickoff. But I just remembered this. But this kid was the sideline commentator, and Tom did not go to him very much. and I just remember that this young man, I call him a kid, but yeah, he was in school. I think he was a year younger than me. He was complaining that Tom wasn't going to him. And I remember thinking, wow, this guy must be pretty confident that he's like a junior at KU. And he's complaining about not talking enough, and he's the sideline guy for Kansas football. And, of course, this young man was Kevin Harlan. Kevin went on to do great things, but I laugh with Kevin Harlan about that many times, that we both got our start back there in 1982 with Tom Hedrick.
We would both agree, Kevin Harlan, the gold standard of broadcasting, no doubt, and one of Tom's number one pupil of all time, hands down. That's quite a crew. Tom Hedrick, voice of the Jayhawks, David Lawrence, and Kevin Harlan back in 1982. Amazing stuff. Did you have jitters on your first broadcast, or like you said, you were more focused on winning the game?
I was just a coach. The jitters would be worried about if my tight ends were going to get that double team.
Sure.
Because if they didn't get that double team, then the offensive line coach, Kent Stevenson, was going to chew my tail.
So that begs the question, because as the years have gone on in a Hall of Fame broadcast career for you, at some point it did start to become about winning the broadcast. And you poured yourself in terms of preparation and great storytelling and watching the same game film, but now for different reasons, to be the best analyst you could be. When did it start to transition to winning the broadcast? Because I know you care as much as anybody I've ever worked with, and I mean that wholeheartedly anywhere I've been.
Well, thanks. And sometimes maybe that gets in the way of being a broadcaster when you care maybe even too much. But I started the tradition outside of when I was coaching my freshman team, as I did for 25 years in the public schools in Lawrence. But I would go to the practices with Don Fambrough, and we would just go look at the practice, how was it going. Coach would talk about what he liked. We would rehash, our past stories, our relationship. But I continued with that again, when I wasn't coaching my own team, by going into practice. And that helped me prepare for our opponents. And, you know, I've watched tape. I prepared as a coach. It wasn't difficult for me to want to be my very best as a color analyst in preparing for our opponents. And so, and now that I'm no longer teaching in public schools, I have more time. So it's made the transition to a little less time as far as teaching, to be able to spend more time in watching opponents.
To fill in some of the blanks a little bit here, just chronologically, and then we'll take a commercial break and come back and dive into some of your favorite moments in KU football and basketball history. But there was not resistance, but I guess maybe a question posed of you by Monty Johnson. Hey, man, you got to pick one or the other. You're either a coach or you're a broadcaster. Take me back to him phrasing that and the motivation that served for you, but then also the timetable after Fam was let go, a coaching stint at Altoona Midway, and then Mike Gottfried brings you back.
Yeah, well, I was the representative in 1982 when our athletics director stepped down. And one of the reasons that he stepped down, I think, is because football did not have a good 1982. And Ted Owens, a remarkable coach, remarkable career, but his seasons have been going way less than what expectations were. And I think our athletics director saw that coming and stepped down. And so I was chosen as one of the representatives to be on the board to choose the new athletics director, and we met 6 or 7 times and got our list of people that we thought would be really strong. One of them, Lou Holtz, by the way. But then I learned a little bit of the politics that goes in on this, that Monty Johnson's name wasn't brought up until the very end, and it's because he had he was not a big supporter of either head coach. And I kind of felt bad that when he was put into the finals, that's when I went to both Ted Owens and Don Fambrough and I told them, and they both said the same thing, that if Monty gets it, we're done.
Wow.
And so I kind of felt like I let them down because I was kind of thrown in there, and I didn't do the research to know the conflicts in the past. But eventually Monty does get hired. He does fire both head coaches, and one of those, if you look at it, hindsight, turned out to be probably a pretty good move. But he was trying to help my career, and he told me, David, you got to choose to either be a broadcaster or a coach. You can't do both. And I remember for 40 years after that thinking, you know what, I think I proved Monty wrong, that I could be a coach. We don't talk about my coaching career because, it's public schools, but I don't feel like, I think it's just as big part of my life as the broadcasting, but I was able to have great years coaching freshmen in Lawrence, Kansas, and had so many great relationships and hopefully impacted many, many young men at a very critical age, at the age of 15. And I was able to be a broadcaster. So I was able to prove to Monty that, yes, you could be a coach, you can be a broadcaster, but that's just part of why my life has just been so blessed.
Ended up being the best of both worlds. You're playing your games on Thursdays, and you could travel with the KU football team the next day, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the freshmen played on Thursdays, and it allowed me to get out of town when we needed to travel. I remember someone, without knowing that I was a coach, they were being very complimentary of me as an analyst, and said how I explained things in such a way that they could understand them. They said that sometimes people talk over your head, but you kind of talk like you're talking to basically describing, not a high school or college team, but maybe freshmen. because that's what I was doing all my life. I was coaching freshmen, so I was kind of bringing it down. I won't say dumb it down, because you just try to modify and make things more simple for your freshman teams, and that's kind of what I do on the air.
That's an old Tom Hedrick lesson in his Sportscasting 101 play-by-play class, is never talk over the head of your audience, and you do as good a job in making it easily digestible and understandable for the common football fan as anybody I've ever seen. Well, we're just scratching the surface of great stories with David Lawrence today, someone that's covered the Jayhawks in the main sports of football and men's basketball, but really campus-wide for over 4 decades in his current role. We're going to talk some about his favorite memories and moments on Mount where he had straight ahead. Hanni and the Hawks is presented by our friends at Jefferson's, but also a new sponsor. A big thank you to Construction Specialties. It's Lawrence's home improvement leader, providing high-caliber kitchen and bathroom remodels. They're also a certified Pella Windows installer and a full-service designer as well. Find out more at homeimprovementlawrence.com. More coming up right after this on Kansas Nation. It's Hanni and the Hawks. Welcome back to Hanni and the Hawks here on Kansas Nation. One of my favorite episodes already. David Lawrence joining us today. Nobody cares about Kansas as much as this guy. I genuinely believe it. I see it every day when he's out at football practice. I see it in his preparation. I see it in the way he treats every day as a gift and a blessing to walk on Mount Oriad. And that includes almost 45 seasons broadcasting the football games, 26 seasons doing men's basketball pre and post. This is the voice that you drive home to as he interviews your favorite players and reads your text messages on the air. So many great memories, and we're going to cover some of those here in just a bit. But we started by talking about your playing career and how you became a Jayhawk. I don't think I touched on the fact that you were a multi-positional guy, tight end and offensive guard. Real quickly, as we transition exclusively into your broadcast career, how much did playing multiple positions and doing it as effectively as you did, again, all Big 8, sets you up to be such a great analyst?
Yeah, I did learn a different area. In my heart, I was always a tight end, always will be a tight end, but should have spent more time doing squats and working on speed. But John Hedrick, he was convinced that I would serve the team better as an offensive guard, and as it turned out, like many other things, John Hedrick was correct. But yeah, it was great having Coach Hedrick, getting to know him as a coach before he spent his life as a fundraiser at the place that he loved, and of course starting out as an All-American in 2 different positions. So wow, man, what a contributor to Kansas athletics.
Yeah, and if we, spend some time at some point talking about all the great players and coaches and amazing Kansas Jayhawks that you've been around, either describing the careers of or playing and coaching with, boy, that would be a special group. We might have to circle back to that at the very end. But as we go back to the early broadcast days and kind of cutting your teeth as an announcer, what were some of your favorite teams early on? Obviously, we talked about the Hedrick, Harlan, Lawrence broadcast team, but when you were first doing sidelines with Bob and Max and Glenn Mason was the coach, take me back to some of those players and teams you covered and favorite memories at Kansas Memorial Stadium.
I was very green, and I went to Bob Davis and said, Bob, this is when I became this pre- and post-game host, and I was a sideline person to call broadcasts. Bob and Max, they were the broadcast team that people loved for good reason. They were just a part of, being in their car or in their living room, and they were, Bob and Max were looked at by other broadcasters as the top team. Yeah. I mean, you just get the feel, right, when you're walking in beside someone and how they're looked at by everyone else. It was kind of like, wow, they were. So anyway, again, going back, circling around, just so blessed to have these people in my life to learn from. But I said, Bob, tell me what I need to know about being a broadcaster here, because I've been a coach. I had that 1 year of experience working with Tom, but for the most part, very green. And of course, Bob, just seeing that, kind of wants to ease my attention, said, David, it's really easy. There's just three rules of broadcasting. Number one, get an in and out breaks on time. And I thought, well, I can do that. Number two, honor all your sponsors. I said, well, I can do that too. I've got these cards to read. And number three, don't say that word. And as if you do those three things, you're great. And it kind of, that did ease my tension, but I'll try to tell this story. If you haven't heard it, what's crazy is it sounds like it's made up, but it really wasn't. To answer your question, the Mark Williams Jayhawks back in '95 that went to the Aloha Bowl, that's one of my favorite teams of all time because they were just underestimated, underrated throughout. They ended up being a top 10 UCLA team in the Aloha Bowl. But earlier in the season, actually it was '94, I'm interviewing. And I think one of the reasons why they came up with a broadcast, a sideline person, was because Max, he really didn't like interviewing Glenn Mason. And Mace, we're friends. I coached his kids in junior high, but he was like a cornered badger sometimes when you're trying to talk to him after the games. Max kind of left that to me. So we're at Texas Stadium. We just played North Texas, and I'm waiting for Mace to come out, and I don't want to go to the break when he comes out because Mace wants to talk when he comes out. And as we all know, as you know, you got to wait during a commercial break. So yeah, he appears, and I've been thinking about what I was going to ask him. And while I'm thinking, I'm hearing Bob and Max in my ear talk about the great game of Mark Williams, our quarterback. It was Mark Williams, our top rusher. Mark Williams, our top passer, and so that's going through my head. And Mace has come out, and he wants to talk. I said, Coach, can't talk quite yet. And he's ready to go. Let's go. And so he comes out, and I feel the tension. I feel Mace, where he's coming from. I remember what I just heard in my ear. I said, Coach Williams, what did you think of the game tonight? And, of course, if you remember who our basketball coach was at that time, I could have said some really profane things to Glenn Mason. He would have liked those way more than being called Coach Williams. And then going back to the story about Bob Davis, always trying to ease up, and he can talk in my ear without people hearing it on the air. He says, David, just remember Rule 3 right now.
Don't say
that word. I really thought I was going to quit. I didn't know. Mace forgave me for that. It wasn't that year. It was some year later. But anyway, I grew from that. It was as humbling, humiliating, embarrassing, but that happened, and maybe that helped shape who I was because, man, that was quite a way to really start out your broadcast career.
Such a great story. I love how self-deprecating you can be, but also just so down to earth and willing to laugh at each other. We've all had moments like that where we've had something come out we didn't intend to, and how you recover from it is the name of the game, and obviously a Hall of Fame career has followed. That whole story started out by me asking you about some of your favorite teams back in the Mason era, and you mentioned the 95 Aloha Bowl team. I know the 92 Aloha Bowl team that beat BYU was another one. That was probably a fond memory as you got to take your lovely wife Linda over to Hawaii for a week. Those are probably like early David Lawrence era career moments where you're thinking, wow, I'm calling games at my alma mater. We're going bowling. This is a pretty sweet life I've carved out for myself.
Glenn Mason was a really good coach, underappreciated, and it's because of the timing. I mean, when he took a program that was at the very bottom of college football, except for K-State, and he brought them up to, being consistent, winning teams, and not appreciated because as the same time that he got here, Roy Williams came, and he was taking Jayhawk teams to Final Fours,
Right.
Playing in championship games, and then a guy from Iowa came down to coach the worst program in college football, and Bill Snyder, credited with maybe the greatest turnout in college football history, got all the attention, and it didn't really go on what Glenn Mason did at Kansas, but Mace was really one of the best coaches in the history of Kansas. They were always tough teams. I mean, he was just kind of like, remember one time that we were playing down at the U, and they were basically bullying our guys in the calisthenic lines and encroaching on our space as we were warming up, and Mace told them to go out and fight them. He was never going to be intimidated, out-toughed, and his teams represented that. So certainly 95 with the Mark Williams, June Henley, L.T. Levine, his victory, our victory over top 5 Colorado on the road was one of the top 3 or 4 best games in my broadcasting history. We went down there and not only beat them, but we beat them down. The game started out with our fullback, L.T. Levine, being stepped on by Ralphie, the Buffalo, and he had to get taped up. And we just went out and proceeded to kick their tail.
Wow.
But L.T. Levine, what a great one. He was another tailback, but he went to fullback because June Henley got the call there.
How about that? During your sideline career, you also had a chance to eventually get to a Tangerine Bowl. Mizzou didn't steal that one from you, Coach Fam. That was in 2003 with Bill Whittemore at quarterback. There was the Fort Worth Bowl after that. Eventually, you would take over as the color analyst right when things were really getting good with Mangino and the Todd Reesing era, and we'll get to that in a second. But is there one more funny story you can tell us from your sideline days, maybe with a microphone battery that you can share?
I knew you would go in there. Bob Newton, our producer engineer for 30 years, a great friend, a great loyal person to work with, but he was always taking care of the company dime and not replacing things until you absolutely needed it. And, we had a big battery that went into the field mic. And I always say, Newton, just put a new battery in, dude. It's not that big a deal. He says, no, I'm just going to give you one. And when this one runs out, then you can replace it down there. And I don't like doing those kind of things when I'm trying to talk. And so this big battery lay in my pocket. And, I put all the other stuff I normally put in my pocket, car keys, change, whatever. And so I'm down there intently looking at the action and talking to Bob and Max on the air about what I'm seeing on the sideline. And it's one of those things where something's off, something is wrong, and it takes me a while because I'm so focused on the game. And that's when I realize that there is something in my pocket on fire. There was a chemical reaction to this big battery in my keys deep in my pocket. And I made a comment, and fortunately I was not on the air, but Bob and Max could hear me about what was on fire. And if that, of course, had been on the air, there's another thing. I'm very fortunate. I would never be a broadcaster again. But that was a true story. I had something on fire in my pants because of the reaction to this big battery. And so from then on, we always had to put a cap on the ends of that big battery. And that was a joke that we had for many years after that.
When that region was on fire, did you stay away from rule number 3?
Yes. But the substitute would have also got me fired had it been on the air.
Right. That's awesome. What a story. What a story. There's other stories we could have gotten to, including Sonny Cumbie. We'll save that for another episode.
Good.
But you had an illustrious career calling the games from that vantage point. For anybody who was alive in that era, he kind of became the color analyst on the field. Obviously, Max delivered his own type of color, and it was a voice synonymous with Kansas athletics unlike any other for 60 years of broadcast greatness. But the true X's and O's analytical stuff was coming from the field level until when Max decided to hang him up. And it wound up being pretty good timing, did it not? Because here comes the Mark Mangino peak years. Pick up the story there as you move upstairs to the booth, just in time for some amazing Kansas football, a 20-win stretch over the course of 2 seasons.
Well, just looking at Mark's career, he had so many great attributes that Glenn Mason did. Mm-hmm. Toughness. Nobody was going to out-tough our guys. Mm-hmm. And as a football player, as a former player, as a fan, that's why you respected, because our teams, they may not have the talent as the opponents, but no one was going to out-tough us. And I saw that from Glenn Mason and Mark Mangino, and it was great to be a part of that. It was just a mentality. He was very tough on his assistant coaches, tough on his players, something that kind of got in the way and why that he was dismissed. But he really brought our teams up to a level that fans were proud of our guys when they left the field, regardless if they won or not. But they were never out tough. They would compete to the very end. And then, of course, being able to take lesser talent, the 2-star, the 3-star talent, and put them at a level where they were beating teams with 4- and 5-star talent. And that's what made Mangino the National Coach of the Year in 2007. And what a magic year. I mean, it was, gosh, I can't believe it's almost 20 years now, because it seems like yesterday, but that's just the way things go when you get older. But it was a great year. People say that we had the easier schedule. I would have gladly had the opportunity to play everyone in the Big 12 Conference that year, and we hung 70 on Nebraska. We went the winning streak, winning at College Station at Texas A&M, and probably my favorite stadium was a top 5 game for me. We won in Manhattan, won in Stillwater. Did not win against Missouri. I think we were very beat up and not at full capacity. But I will say this about, that fall to the Tigers and what they called the game of the century for good reason, 2 undefeated teams, is that had we played the week after in the Big 12 Conference Championship against Oklahoma, all of our guys that were hurt would have not been able to heal. Mm-hmm. And thus, I don't think we would have been at our best in the New Year's Day Bowl. So I do think we needed that. We needed that time off to rest up and to heal up in beating Virginia Tech, which was just a life. It's one of the best times of my broadcast career in my life, being able to broadcast in the Orange Bowl.
That was my next question. I mean, that's the biggest victory you've called, the BCS bowl win. But going back to your answer about your favorite victory as a player, it was your senior day game versus Mizzou. So I'm curious, the iconic call that you and Bob had the following year in the snow, Reesing to Meyer, incredible call these two put together. I think we're probably showing a clip of it right now. Is that your favorite moment in the booth as an analyst, or was it that night down in Miami taking down Virginia Tech?
Wow. Those are definitely the top two. It's hard to separate those because of what the Orange Bowl meant to our program. We had never won an Orange Bowl. We had lost in 47 and 1969. So that validated our program. a top, and the game meant so much because we did lose to Missouri. Had we lost that one, people would have doubted our entire season. Mm-hmm. So I think that legitimized how great this year was for Kansas by beating Virginia Tech. And then the game in the snow, Riesing to Meyer, that was just epic. Arrowhead, snow, the comeback, two of easy all-time favorite players that many of us have. It was just a great call for us to be able to make, and of course Bob set me up, and we were able to bring it home.
And bring it home you did, one of the all-time great calls in the history of the Jayhawk Radio Network. Well, something that is aligned with the rise and fall of Kansas football is the career of David Lawrence as the KU football analyst. You have some peak years, then you have to survive some lean years. Peak years, lean years. And I reference that not to point out that we've had some tough times, but because your preparation, your passion for Kansas football, the way you convince yourself heading into kickoff every Saturday, by golly, today's going to be our day, we're going to win this thing.
Three turnovers.
Yes, which means it convinces me too. But the point is, much like those peak Mason years, and then you had some lean years before the Mangino ramp up, you then had to endure some tough years post-Mangino until Coach Leipold got it rolling again. And not to skip ahead any of those years because those were your last years working with Bob, obviously, but it's gotten good again now with Lance Leipold. And you and I now, 10 seasons of getting to share the booth together, have had a chance to call some pretty major moments. I know my favorite night with you was not a bowl win, but rather a game we almost didn't get to because we were flying in the day of from doing basketball the night before and had to get down to Austin, Texas, and we had multiple flights canceled, and thank goodness Southwest got us there just in the nick of time because the next 4 hours would be my favorite working the games with David Lawrence, including Jared Casey, the mighty Casey, with the catch of his life. And your call, jumping in right after that, the pride of Plainville, making the play, I'll never forget. Take me back to that night and what have been your favorite moments in the modern era on the mic?
Well, first I want to say this. Probably since I've been an empty nester, in the 2010s from on, I start looking at these young men, like they're my kids. And gosh, another 5 years will be like they're my grandkids. In other words, those teams that had bad records and didn't win games had great young men playing on them.
They did.
And some of the best. And so that's kind of what I love the Orange Bowl team. I love the Mason, the great Mangino teams. But you know what? We've had some teams that, for whatever reason, lack of a better coach, not recruiting all the right people, but those people, many of them had great integrity. Mm-hmm. I truly feel it's a blessing. We'll have a former player, Leipold does a great job of bringing him back, but we're meeting tomorrow night. And I'll have so many fun conversations with people that sometimes I can't keep the order. I don't know if this was 98 or if this is 2011 or 2012. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And just developing great relationships throughout all those years. So we've had some up years, some down years, and certainly that's what makes it better, right? And there's nothing that gravitates my heart to people out there that were at those games, those home games, and you've been at them too, Brian. And we've got 25,000 people that showed up on days where, we were going to need to be about +3 in turnovers, maybe a fluke or whatever. The lights go off and we score a touchdown to win. But you know what? These people are there. And, man, I love you guys. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, those are the best friends.
Well, Exactly. That sounded like fan the way you said that at the end there. I love that. The way you covered this program with such pride and joy and positivity through the biggest and brightest of days and some really tough ones when we had to get on a plane after a gut punch of a loss. The way you've left your heart out there on the airwaves and on the field as a player is probably what makes it easy for folks to tune in each week. So kudos to you. We're going to step aside for a final timeout. When we come back, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire and have you answer that question. Favorite Leipold era moments, how excited you are about the current regime, the new booth, it's so fabulous. But then we'll close in our fast break with 4 fun ones, just quick hitters, including your favorite Bob and Mac story. That's next on Hanni and the Hawks, presented by Jefferson's. Hanni and the Hawks is presented by Jefferson's with 2 Lawrence locations. Obviously, they're home to the best wings in town. You know that. But did you know they've got some creative new menu items, including their cheesy pepperoni crunch rolls, all right? These are amazing. They're stuffed with pepperoni pizza flavor, fried perfectly crispy, and served with marinara. Out of this world. How about the new Buffalo Chicken Philly? It's a twist on your favorite Philly, served with chicken and drizzled with their special mild sauce and house-made ranch. They also now have chicken and waffles. So whether you want the classic wings with 21 different sauces or something new and creative, they got it for you at Jefferson's on Mass and Wakarusa. Jefferson's, presenting sponsor of Hanni and the Hawks. Welcome back to Hanni and the Hawks, presented by Jefferson's, and now presented in part by Construction Specialties. Well, we're going to wrap it up with David Lawrence, and before we do, though, we were talking about all of the different coaching eras and decades you've covered, and now 45 seasons as an analyst for KU football, your alma mater, and Hall of Fame career. I mean, your name is going to be in the press box on the wall somewhere when it's all said and done with what you've done covering this program. But also, obviously, a great basketball pre- and post-game guy, and I want to get to that in a second, too. But we were wrapping up the previous conversation talking about you and I getting the call that night in Austin, Texas, when KU storms back to win it in overtime. Jalen Daniels to Jared Casey, the mighty Casey with the catch. That's my favorite moment with you. What's your favorite Leipold era memory? How fired up are you about where this program is currently at, especially with this beautiful new booth and all the resources being funneled towards sustaining football success at Kansas?
The comeback in Memphis was pretty special.
It was.
I mean, that was we were playing for a win. We didn't get the win. But the way that we were left for dead, and so many people, probably turned it off, but what a comeback. Defensively, getting a big strip. Offensively, Jason Bean stepping up big time. One of the best backup quarterbacks in the history of KU athletics, right? And I think when I think of what Lance has brought to the table, it's a culture. It's a culture that we see every day at practice, but it's his players bonding together. We're not losing players that we want to keep, and I know the new era, we don't need to get into all that, but these people want to be around the culture that we have at the University of Kansas. It's very strong. And yes, the last couple of years, we have lost some nail biters. It could have, 4 plays, we could have gone to 2 more bowl games, but we didn't. But you know what? I think this year, I think turnabout's fair play. And I think, that ball's going to bounce better for us. I'm excited about what I've seen in the spring. I like what I see from both quarterbacks, and what we have defensively on the defensive front is going to be nothing short than outstanding. I think it could be the top 2 or 3 best defensive lines in the conference. I'm seeing a lot of promise at linebacker, and in the secondary, we've got some guys, Alexander and Todd, who've been around the program, some nice influx of some offensive linemen, and a pretty special running back paired with a much bigger running back that I think is going to be a 1-2 combo that's going to be a lot of fun. We're not going to confuse one for the other, Willis and Edwards in the booth. It's going to be pretty obvious who has the ball, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yasin and Dylan built very differently, about 4 inches of height and 50 pounds of strength different, but thunder and lightning, it's going to be fun. So I'm curious, for the 10-year-old from Parsons who came up over the hill and looked down into the stadium and saw all the flags and saw the incredible home of the Jayhawks back then on 1968's look of the campus, what's it like for the veteran broadcaster now coming over the hill on Mount Oriad, looking into the reimagined David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, the transformational Gateway District, and seeing today's KU football game day?
What I love is our fans' reaction. You know, they've been showing up. They'll continue to show up. It legitimizes the program as being big time, because as much as I love that stadium, it still lacked things that people looked down their noses at us and called us a basketball school. And as much as I love basketball, I hate that name being, being talked at like we're just that one-hit wonder. So it really steps Kansas football up to be big time. I applaud David Booth for what he has brought to the table and all the other fans that have stepped up. But it would not be the same if it wasn't at the base of the Campanile Hill.
Yeah.
And that's how I used to always start out when I came in the broadcast. This is the base of the Campanile Hill, the most beautiful setting for college football. Some might argue with me. That's okay. But it's my favorite. And it's still there, except it's all new around them. And, I think it's going to be fun playing on that half new end on the east side to be a full capacity next year. But it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be fun in London.
Yeah.
Of course, I get to work with you.
Man, it's a blessing.
Great friend. Been so blessed. All the people around me, but you're a pro at what you do, and I hope people can hear that our relationship is great, and it's also with BMAC and Sean Kellerman and Steve Kincaid.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a team, and I think there's a lot of teams that probably aren't truly out to make each other as good as they possibly can be. And I think that's what we are for one another.
Blessed is the man who gets to do what he loves, but doubly blessed is the man who gets to do it with people he loves. And we certainly get a chance to do that on our crew. We're pretty tight-knit. We're going to close it down with our fast break. 4 fun ones, quick ones here. I referenced the amazing job you've done for now 26 seasons on the pre- and post-game for basketball. And I'm going to ask you in a second to tell you about the favorite basketball student athlete you ever interviewed. I'm telling you that up front before I wax poetic on how good you are at these, so I don't put you on the spot. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think of an answer. I truly believe, folks, his ability post-game to coax out of these guys some of the more entertaining and engaging human interest stories, to tell you things on your drive home from Allen Fieldhouse that you never knew about your favorite Jayhawk player. You have a calm way about you that the players trust you. There's an instant rapport, and the line of questioning when they've been asked 101 times about boxing out on rebounding or hitting that free throw, and you hit us with something they maybe haven't been asked before, and they light up. I've seen it on the faces of these guys. And so for all the accolades that have been thrown your way for the amazing analyst that you are in football, and there is none better, I think the pre- and post-game basketball work is such an underrated component of your Hall of Fame career, particularly the way you interview these players. So, having filibustered to let you think of a guy, who is your favorite basketball student athlete to interview? Doesn't have to be the specific conversation, but somebody you really enjoyed in 26 years of bringing those conversations into the cars and the living rooms of Jayhawk fans.
Well, first of all, that means a lot what you just said, because you do a great job interviewing our student athletes.
Thank you.
Gosh, all of the above would be the closest thing. But let me just say this. The most meaningful looking back is Marcus and Markeith Morris and Thomas Robinson, were a challenge to talk to. I don't think they liked me. They didn't like coming on the air out there. And it was where you had to prepare 30 questions to fill that 2.5 minutes. But they stayed. Their careers were 3-4 years, and we developed a rapport with one another. And now when they come back, and they came back a lot last year, as you know, they come and find me.
Man.
And I would say that's the most meaningful.
Yep.
That they came back. And
that's pretty special.
I remember Marcus telling me, man, I'm so glad they didn't pay me. I would have never made it.
That's pretty good. Okay, favorite Bob and Max story. And in this case, it could be about something on air, but I'm thinking this is probably on a road trip somewhere.
Wow.
At one of their favorite watering holes or mom, pa, kettle restaurants along the road. Favorite Bob and Max story?
Well, both were non-drinkers, and they would go anywhere as long as it's a barbecue or a mom and pop's place like this. Never a franchise. It's always something. They had little places at each little town that they would go to, and they would just go and be funny. They would not talk about the game the next day. Of course, I'm thinking, I want to talk about, man, here's my 3 things I'm looking for in the broadcast that we need to be looking for. No, Max was all about getting to have a conversation with other people, and that's why so many people enjoyed Max. It was just all about, being a good friend and his conversation.
No one particular funny story? Did they take an airplane once and had to throw something overboard? Or can we not tell that?
Oh! Yeah, that was before me when Bob Newton actually flew a plane, a very small single-engine plane, to Ames, Iowa, and Max had to potty. And Bob says, Max, we don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
So Max says, well, Newton, get me a cup. So Max filled the cup up and tried to drop it out the window without getting any on Bob Davis, but that was one of the big ones. Man. so many laughs with those guys. It was just all about just funny people, and
some poor farmer in southeast Iowa thought it was raining.
And that's exactly
very
what
much
they've
was
been
not
saying
rain
for decades later.
All right, I want a Mount Rushmore.
Oh boy.
Of coaches or players, just Jayhawks, iconic Jayhawks, and you can't pick BD or Max. I'm talking players or coaches that were there during your almost 50 years as a Jayhawk, including your playing days. So, this could be Coach Hadel early on. It could be Paul Pierce as a basketball player. But guys that's in your 5 decades of being a Jayhawk, you've been blessed to get to cover, coach, interview, what have you. Who would be the Mount Rushmore?
Number 1 is Bill Self.
Yep.
I mean, when things weren't going well with football and other sports, Coach Bouchard would have some really good years, but men's basketball really held us up. Mm-hmm. And Bill Self took a job that was a great job by Roy Williams, elevated, which was almost impossible to think could be done, but he did. And so glad that he is back at Kansas. It would not be the same. Wow.
I didn't mention Danny because you weren't doing pre and post basketball at the time, but obviously Danny Manning would be on that list. But from your playing and coaching or broadcast career to round out the rest of the list, is the gunslinger on there? Todd
would have to be one. I get caught up on the greatest this, greatest that, quarterback, because everything's changed at what quarterbacks can do now that they couldn't do before. But Todd just brought this electricity, played his best on game day, and did it while having fun. And it made the rest of us have fun.
Yeah.
So I would put him here. I'm going to throw James McClinton in there.
Okay. One of your favorites.
One of my favorites, and I know you love him too.
Absolutely.
That we've got, you know, I'm not on the committee to put people on walls, but he showed what can happen when the other team can't block your nose tackle. He just destroyed the whole offense. You couldn't pull guards. It made our defensive ends, which probably weren't individually great players, but he made them great because he chased everyone there. He made our linebackers better. He made our secondary better. And there's not a better, more fun person to cover, James McClinton.
Love it.
I have to name another one.
Man, that's tough. I'd put you on the spot with this one. Obviously, John Hadel was coaching and on staff when you were coming in, so that would count. He'd be on everybody's list.
I mentioned this guy, but I'm going to throw him out there. But L.T. Levine was he was a much ballyhooed running back, tailback, and back then it was the fullback that blocked, and the tailback got all the headlines. And the '95 team, which I've said was one of my all-time favorite teams ever, because everyone knows about Meyer moving from quarterback to wide receiver, so that's obviously one too. But no one knows about L.T. Levine going from tailback to fullback and making that backfield of Mark Williams, L.T. Levine and June Henley being one of the most dynamic in KU history. So it's just all about unselfish acts by L.T. and Kerry Meyer.
Boom. To me, that's one of the countless things I love about David Lawrence. You ask about the all-time greats, and he makes it about the unsung heroes, the underappreciated. Those are the guys you and I both love to cover, and I love it that's how the answer ended up unfolding. Okay, final question. I know we've run long on this episode, but man, so many great stories from one of my dearest friends. One of the things I cherish the most about our friendship and just the way you live life and the way you lead in your family, in this athletic department, on our broadcast crew, is that what you love, this passion of Kansas athletics, it's all about family, whether it's the family of the team or your specific family that you've been able to share your career with. Coaching Josh when he was coming up through the ranks at South Junior High, or your lovely wife Linda, who's been a checker on campus, and what that means is you're checking on student attendance, and she's had all her favorite players for how many decades now. Your mother Kay, your late mother Kay, who would call you after every broadcast, she was tuning in as faithful as any Jayhawk listener ever. It's all about family, and you've been able to share your career with every aspect of your family, your two lovely daughters as well, now your grandkids. We'll simply wrap it up with this. What has been your favorite aspect of sharing your love for Kansas football and Kansas athletics in general with those you love the most on this earth? Well,
and let's not forget that you officiated my daughter's wedding.
One of the top 2 proudest days of my life next to the National Championship Day.
Yeah. I would just think that none of it's forced. I mean, Josh is the biggest fan. And he didn't get a chance to play. He was supposed to, but he got hurt. That my stepson, Bill Sutter, a former player and a big supporter of KU athletics, and my wife, she just loved all those football players. It's very unspoiled. So yeah, it's just something that flows well. It's just natural. It's not me trying to cram anything down anyone's throat. It's just who I am, and that's what I am. I'm a Jayhawk, and Kansas football has been a huge part of my life going back to 1968.
Nobody does it better. Nobody cares more than the great David Lawrence. This has been a ton of fun today, my friend.
Thank you, Brian.
We've had so many wonderful memories over the years together. I genuinely believe the best is still yet to come. Can't wait for all that lies ahead, buddy.
Yeah, Kansas football 2026. Let's go.
Let's go,
Let's go
baby.
to London, too.
All right. This has been Hanni and the Hawks on Kansas Nation, presented by Jefferson's.